Alright guys, welcome back to another video. Here we're going to be changing out the front brake lines to these braided steel lines. That's gonna, supposedly it helps make the pedal firmer, decreases chance of having items pierce or sticks pierce the rubber factory hoses. We will go through the process of installing these, bleeding the brakes. I will show you guys a way to bleed the brakes on your own. That way you don't have to depend on anybody when you're doing this job. I believe these brake lines are from Rough Country. There was a good deal on them. You can get them from basically anybody, any of your preferences that you want to buy them from. Just whatever length you want to get, go ahead and choose that, and I don't know, watch and follow along. The important part about this is before you actually tighten this, attach it to here, you have to insert this piece into here. Always remember safety first, and always use jack stands, especially if you're taking the tires off. Alright, now that we got the wheels off, you can kind of see what the old brake line that I'm talking about, how it's that kind of a rubber material. You don't want to take a chance of that being cut. So we're going to change that out. If you guys don't feel like actually messing with the brake lines, having to bleed the fluid and everything, you can actually get a lot more length out of this factory line. I'll kind of share this with you. It usually runs on a bracket that's connected to here, and it's the bracket that's kind of like held on like this. You can actually pry it out and you can get this out of the bracket. That way you can reroute the brake line on the outside of the shock instead of it being on the inside of the shock on this bracket. So that gives you a lot more room. The new ones that I'm adding on are basically identical length to these ones once I kind of did that modification, but it's still just going to be a little bit more protection and supposedly better pedal response, firmer pedal. So with the Hemi, you kind of need all the braking power you can get. Alright, next we need to check the brake fluid level. Just wipe it off so you don't get any dirt or grease in your brake fluid, and then put some rags around the cap. That way don't get the brake fluid falling down into your motor or engine bay, just so it catches anything that falls. Okay, looks like we need to fill up a little bit, so we'll add some more brake fluid to it. Now it's time to clamp the factory hose, and then we're going to disconnect the banjo bolt from the caliper and loosen up all the lines. Whenever you disconnect the banjo bolt from the caliper, you want to make sure you take off both of the brass washers. Sometimes you can accidentally leave a brass washer on the caliper, and that will cause a brake leak or brake fluid leak. Now you can feed the banjo bolt through the new steel line, making sure there's a brass washer on both sides of the steel line before it's going on the caliper. Next, you can clean off the brake fittings, and you can disconnect the actual steel line from the main brake lines. put my finger there, that way I don't leak out all the fluid that's in my brake master cylinder. And then you can grab your steel line, make sure you put that bracket in there first, and then you can snug up the lines there. I always spray off the whole area with brake cleaner, that way there's no brake fluid just sitting on my paint. That will corrode your paint on anything, even your garage floor. Alright, now you can put in your bolt to hold it, and then you can put in the actual lock piece. And you can go through and snug everything, make sure it's nice and tight. Alright, and then we will just repeat on the other side, and then we will bleed the brakes. Alright, got the passenger side done. Now it's time to bleed the brakes. You always go with the caliper that's furthest away from the master cylinder. So that would be the passenger side. So we'll go ahead and you always make sure we check to make sure it's full. So then you can go ahead and just let this open up. Kind of let it bleed out the air by gravity. Just crack it open and just give it some time. I'm going to go through and crack the other one open also, just to let it drain get some of the air out. The level in the master cylinder is already lowering. I'm going to clamp this side. Go look on this side and see if it's dripping yet. Alright, started dripping out, so I was able to tighten up the bleeder. Alright, now that the brakes have been bled by gravity, it's time to do the single person setup. So what you can see here is what I have is a water bottle that has brake fluid in it. Make sure there's no actual water in there, so it's got to be completely dry. I got a clear hose attached to the brake bleeder. I've already got fluid, kind of brake fluid down into the hose. There is a hole in the bottle there to allow air to breathe. You don't want it, it's not a closed system, and you want the clear hose to be in the actual fluid. So then you can go through and you can loosen the bleeder, and then we can go pump the brakes. And then we can close the brake line after we've pumped it. Alright, with the brake line closed and tightened all the way, we can go over to the other side. Alright, we can set this one up just the same exact way. What I'll do differently is I won't fill the hose up with fluid. That way you can kind of see exactly what's happening. You want the bottle to be higher than the actual bleeder though, or the top of the bottle to be higher than the bleeder. While you're doing this, make sure you're checking the fluid in the actual master cylinder. Keep that full. Alright, you can go ahead and press the brake pedal slowly. Always press it down slowly and release it slowly. No air in the system. Tighten your bleeder. Disconnect it and call it a day. Alright, lastly I got these little brake line holders from Amazon or something. And so you can zip tie the brake line to it. And it pinches it and holds it into place. I'll just do one zip tie for now, just so I can make sure it's not tugging any way I don't want it to tug. So, and then you can take your ABS and you can zip tie your ABS to your actual brake line. Alright, I do want to show you guys a little bit of what's happening here, just so everyone kind of understand what this purpose of this bottle is and the bleeder and how it's working. When you attach this hose to the actual bleeder and you're filling this hose up with fluid, you go to push that brake pedal, any bubbles that come out of the actual caliper are gonna get into this hose full of fluid, and they're just gonna float all the way to the top. When they float up there and then you push that pedal down, it pushes the bubbles into the hose, they float to the top. When you release that pedal slowly, what's happening is it's going to suction the fluid from the hose back into the caliper. It's going to suction from here, and it's also going to take from the brake master cylinder. When you do the hose system, it's making it so it's a closed system, and it's making it so when it's sucking in the fluid back into the caliper, it's not sucking in air from outside, it's sucking the fluid that's in the hose. The reason you need to have this bottle higher than the actual caliper is it allows the air to float to the top. That way when the bubbles, when the fluid gets sucked back into the actual caliper, it's not sucking in back the air bubbles. The reason it's difficult to do this alone is when you push the pedal down, you need to open up the bleeder, and then you need to have somebody hold the pedal all the way down, then you close the bleeder, and then you release the pedal. The reason you're doing that is because when you close the bleeder, the only option to take fluid is from the brake master cylinder. With this bleeder open and you release the pedal, it could suck from right here and the master cylinder. That's why you hook the hose up to it. That way any suctioning that happens, it's sucking from this bottle of brake fluid already in it. So that's why you're able to do this alone and kind of an easier closed system.